Hello, everyone. This should be working now. Okay. Hello, everyone. If you can hear me and even possibly see me, I'm Emily from Climate Action Network. And we are hosting a capacity building webinar on post-2015 process and the SDGs. We have had some slight technical difficulties, which is why this call is starting so late. One of our main speakers can't get onto our Hangout. But we're going to go ahead anyway, take questions from all of you that are there. And please do keep writing on the event wall if for some reason you can't get through. And also please be using the chat and question box. So that should be just on your side of your screen, and that's there for questions. Okay, mine takes a little while to load up, so please do just persevere with it. So we will, our main speaker was going to elaborate quite a lot, and he had a PowerPoint presentation. As he's not on, we're going to just do with what we can, and then we might be able to deliver his presentation at another time. So, so at Climate Action Network, the post-2015 process is something that we've been working on globally for the last couple of years, and as we know, it's culminating this September. So my colleague Lina from the Policy Department here at CAN has been working on this process and can give us a few comments. She wasn't prepared to do this, so please don't ask her any complicated questions or anything, but a few comments on the SDG and the SDG process. And yeah, so I'll hand over to her, and then Vositha will give us some comments on her kind of to South Asia.
Okay, thanks very much, Emily. As Emily said, actually I wasn't prepared to speak now on the process itself, but I have been engaged in the development of the SDGs for the last year and a half. So I should be able to give you a hopefully comprehensive overview on what happened and what will happen next. So I know that most of you haven't been following the SDG process at all, so it might be helpful to just give you a little bit of background on why we are here right now and what is the final outcome. And then I will hand over to Vositha, and she can complement if I missed anything. So basically, the Sustainable Development Goals refer to an agreement of the United Nations Conference on Sustainable Development held in Rio back in 2012. And in Rio it was decided to develop a set of future international development goals. They build on the MDGs, on the Millennium Development Goals, and CAN has been engaged in this process already since before Rio+20, but only got more engaged after 2012 because in Rio it was decided that climate change should be a more integral part of this agenda. And this is important because before that, development and climate change were pretty much seen as two different entities that have not really something to do with each other. And yeah, since science advanced and also the knowledge about climate change advanced, it became more and more apparent that you can't really solve the development issues without also tackling climate change. So this started then this whole new process on the new Sustainable Development Goals to develop them. And in 2014, an open working group was created that should have dealt with how we actually address development in the future. So there were a series of presentations that have been given to governments. A lot of stakeholder engagement has happened. A lot of people participated, also from the regions and at the regional level. And so basically it was decided to have like 17 goals, and this is quite a lot. But it is apparently the only way we can see development more holistically. One of the goals, and that was a huge fight, was the goal on climate change. It's goal 13, and it is actually dealing with climate change, and also tries to give this climate change perspective to this whole development agenda. It is. I must say it's not a very strong goal, but it is a huge win for the climate movement, that it has been recognized that climate change is a development issue, and that we only can deal with poverty eradication if we also address climate change. I won't go too much into detail on the political stages of the open working group, because it anyways concluded last year in October with the adoption of these 17 goals and 169 targets, of which one only is climate, and then a couple of others. There's also energy, water, poverty eradication. There's a goal as well on forest and biodiversity. So there are huge, whatever sector you can imagine, somehow the SDGs deal with it. Having said that, the open working group finished. So the open working group was basically like the brainstorming exercise between countries, so what is important to address. And then in January, a negotiation process started, and basically what we have now is the outcome of this negotiation process. The interesting thing is that the outcome of the open working group has not changed. It has been recognized that really to address poverty and sustainable development, we have to address all these goals and all these 169 targets. There was a lot of pushback from countries to reduce the number, but if you don't address all, you can actually resolve poverty. So this was the conclusion. So the goals and the targets remained the same, and what happened in this negotiation process basically was to add a preamble and to add a section on means of implementation, on finance and technology and capacity building, on what needs to happen to actually make these goals implementable. So after in July we got this new set of basically goals, and together with the preamble and together with an introduction and together with this means of implementation part, and this has been already adopted. So what will happen in September basically is the recognition by heads of state that this has happened, and they will adopt this new agenda, and hopefully from 2016 onwards they will start implementing it. As I have said, climate change has been an integral part of this agenda. It is also cross-cutting. It's not only part of the goal 13, but it's also recognized in several other goals. For example, energy, of course, is of huge importance to combat climate change, and there's a separate goal talking about renewable energies, energy efficiency, and solutions we also need to take into consideration to attack climate change. And then, of course, there are also goals that, for example, talk about food security, that are intrinsically linked to adaptation, and that also only can be seen like in the context of climate change. So this agenda is not an agenda about climate change, but definitely helps us to achieve some of our goals because it talks about sectors we anyways have to address. Just to give you one more example, there's also one goal on cities, and it talks about sustainable transport. So a lot of sectors that will help us actually to achieve our goal, to achieve sustainable development and to combat climate change at the same time are addressed in this agenda. And I heard from one UN official say, and I agree pretty much with it, if all countries would implement the new SDG agenda, we potentially wouldn't have to deal with climate change, because it is cross-cutting across all sectors, and if you do it right, if you take it as country, as a task list to go through and to implement it in the best way possible, I believe that climate change could be hopefully combated by using this agenda as like a roadmap for national activities. Yeah, I think I will give some time for questions maybe, because I know I haven't spoken very I might have jumped from one issue to the other, so if there are any questions, please let me know.
Let's, while people are thinking of their questions, and I encourage everyone that's watching this either to, you should have a Q&A app on the side, but if for some reason you can't load that, please just write onto the wall of the events page where you put your name and your organization, and then we'll collect all the questions from there. I think actually maybe Vositha, if you can talk to us now, and then we'll do all of the questions kind of at the end, as it's just the three of us. Okay. So I'm just going to put you on to presenting to everyone, and from there you should be able to share your screen.
Okay, thank you. And I think Sven is on, if I'm not mistaken. He managed to get online actually. Okay, can you hear me? Everything okay?
Yeah, I can hear you. I just can't see Sven as a presenter on my screen. If you can see him, then maybe you can.
I see him online, but I don't see him as a presenter, so maybe he signed in with the wrong link. Okay, so I will start and then we can kind of see how from there. Okay, so I will be speaking on South Asia and SDGs. Let me figure out how to share the screen. Okay. Yeah. Bear with me because I have not done this before. Okay, there you go. So I will be speaking on SDGs in South Asia, and I work as the Policy and Advocacy Coordinator for Climate Action Network South Asia. And for those who need a little bit of mapping, which is a little stretched here and there, you can see what South Asia represents. We have several countries, India being the largest. India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Nepal, Sri Lanka, and the Maldives. And to understand South Asia better in the sense of numbers, I shall show what we have. So if you look at this World Bank data,
but I don't know.
You can't see my screen.
Emily, can you see Vositha's screen?
No, I can't see it yet, but maybe it's just loading.
Okay, what am I doing wrong here? Okay, so entire screen maybe, sure. Okay, so I actually showed a map before. Oh, what? Okay, no, it looks very weird.
Yeah, it's working now. It's working. Maybe just start from that first slide again.
Okay, sorry. Okay, so going back, this is what I presented, and this is what South Asia looks like. And the question I raised was understanding South Asia in numbers. And I went into the World Bank numbers where I presented what we have, where you have the population of South Asia, which is about 1.7 billion, as noted in 2014. And then economic data, you have economic growth listed down. The environmental impacts, the CO2 emissions are 1.4, as mentioned in 2011. Then the health or the expectancy at birth is 65 years. So these are a few numbers for us to understand where countries are. So if you take between two countries of South Asia, let's say we click on India. Okay, internet please. Okay, there you go. So India itself has about about 1.3 or 1.267 billion people living in India. So South Asia is one of the populations, the largest populations in the world at the moment, one of them, and also one of the most vulnerable in the world to impacts of climate change, natural disasters, poverty, insecurity. So a lot of things that we need to deal with when we're addressing sustainable development are very relevant to South Asia because of that. Now, if we look, okay, I'm switching between things. So in order to address factors of focus, I'll come up with two things. One is how we address development in terms of youth and their involvement, and then issues of development with environment related. So if you take So if you look at youth and unemployment in South Asia, we have about 29% unemployment, and in Bangladesh, 39%. And Bangladesh, which is 50.3, and then Sri Lanka, which is 97, and there's a huge gap between the countries themselves. So if you try to understand South Asia as one country, then we're going to have issues because, as you can see, the countries are different. We have low middle income countries, we have LDCs like Nepal and Bangladesh, and then we have developing countries like India, which has like a large scale of population, very rich people, but with a huge disparity in economic equity. So in addressing this, we need to understand the context of these countries and where they come from. So if you're going to deal with the next one as to how do we finance development, that's one of the key issues when you're addressing issues of South Asia and sustainable development, because we have all these goals, but where does the money come from? So we need to have different innovative ways of addressing this. One would be public-private partnerships, as well as innovative sources and developing. And also this, there has also been this suggestion as to how fuel subsidies could be incorporated into finance and developing a way of using fuel subsidies into funding SDGs being accomplished or reached. Points to be thinking about when we're talking about energy and climate change. So another thing we could look at is how do we look at economic diversification and South-South collaborations in order to address SDGs. So if you're talking about climate change or economy in terms of climate change, there is also the need to address issues of food security as well as livelihoods which are impacted by climate change. And in order to do that, economic diversification plays a key role. And we are speaking of economic diversification, then we need to talk about how country growth is addressed, and sustainable development comes into play as one of the main umbrella things which would bring all these things together, as well as gender equity and equality, and how women and youth are part of the process in a more sustainable and efficient and substantial way. So that's one way to look at how we look at SDGs as well. And yeah, so I will be open for questions. I was doing a little bit of how to link economy, climate change, gender, and energy into one and limit it to 10 minutes. I think I took about 3 minutes trying to bring things together, but I'll be open for questions if there are any. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Vositha. I hope everyone can hear me now.
Okay, now the screen looks really weird. And I think we might have lost Emily, so I'll take over. Thanks, Vositha, for the presentation. So from what I got from your presentation is that there are a lot of challenges in terms of the implementation, but especially in terms of finance. And I'm trying to see if there are any specific questions. Let me see. Question and answers. So there's one question from Kiyomuro Philip. Do the SDG present a special consideration to vulnerable groups like youth and women in developing countries like Uganda, especially on their role in tackling climate change? So yeah, I think that question goes a little bit more to me, so I will answer it myself. Yes, the SDGs specifically address vulnerable groups like youth and women in developing countries, but they don't speak necessarily of the role they play in tackling climate change. This is something we have tried to introduce, but it has been kicked out in basically the final hours. And the reason for not having it addressed specifically, or the reason I was told, is that they didn't want to have like a list of all vulnerable groups. So they basically speak in the document of vulnerable people, but don't list specific vulnerable groups, because it became like an issue that different constituencies try to list their particular group they represent. So there were the indigenous people, then there were the disabled, youth, women, and it became quite a long list. So the compromise was to speak of vulnerable people in general and not to have like this specific list of vulnerable groups. But overall, the agenda addresses at least mentions youth quite a lot, and also mentions women, and connect that as well to the important role they have to tackle sustainable development or to address sustainable development, but also highlight that they are more vulnerable. So yeah. Long answer short, yes, there is some recognition of both these groups. However, they are not spelled out specifically under the climate goal. I hope that answered your question. Emily is back. That's good. We'll actually present like the next issue. A couple of you might be interested in. And she will talk about what is happening in terms of mobilization what will happen in terms of mobilization in New York in September. And if people on this Google Hangout are actually going to the September summit, she will also explain on how you can contribute. So I'll hand it over to Emily.
Okay, let's hope my connection lasts. So yeah, I just wanted to give everyone on the webinar a bit of a roundup about how you can engage in September when the new global goals are announced towards the end of this month. There are lots of organisations who have made this the kind of crux of their campaigning this year, the launch of these goals, and their big asks are for government to implement these asks. So it's okay that we've just spent 2 years negotiating them, but putting emphasis that the public really wants the government to put everything into achieving these goals this time compared to what we achieved on the MDGs. So I'm just going to tell you about a few different events. There are certainly many, many, many events and opportunities to get involved around the world, which I cannot. But to start with, I wanted to tell you about thousands of organisations around the world called Action 2015, and they are campaigning exactly to make these goals recognisable, to hold our governments to account, to not just walk out of these negotiating halls at the end of September in New York and think job done, but to continue to put every effort into achieving them, and all of them, and all of the targets. So on the 24th, they made this their Global Day of Action, 24th of September, which is a Thursday. And on that day, around the world, people will be collecting together to light the way. And that is their kind of symbol, their slogan, the hashtag, all of these things. You can look this all up if you just Google Action 2015 Light the Way, and I think it's .org/Light the Way. You'll find a whole list of global events. So they've got events in schools, in universities, in villages, in communities, and at city level. So in New York, they're expecting thousands of people to come to a candlelit vigil. Details again, which you can find on this website, and that I'll make sure on this webinar page. And you can also find that there are events happening all across the world on this map. Also, we have lots of faith communities that are mobilizing on those days as well, and they will be doing either fasts or pilgrimages on those days, and also holding candlelit vigils to light the way. And of course, this is all and public awareness that these goals have been agreed and will need to be implemented in the next 15 years. So, and then this is a culmination of things that faith groups have been doing all through this year to put the spotlight on sustainable development. There's also an organisation called Project Everyone who are trying to make these goals famous, and they're doing that through their website. They have templates about lessons that can be given in school, plates on public speeches that can be given in communities, and speeches for the radio. And they also have prayers for every different faith. So these are just materials that you can take if you're interested into your community, faith group, school, etc., to educate people on the goals. And the idea is if people are educated on the goals, then they're more likely to hold their government account on implementing them. Finally, as all three of us on this call are members of Climate Change Organisation, there is a big Climate Change Global Day of Action on the 26th of September, which again is happening all around the world. And again, I'll put the website information on this page. But and on this day we are pushing for climate justice, climate jobs, 100% renewable energy, and various activities will be happening from sit-ins to public speeches. And so this is another opportunity to get involved, which puts the spotlight on the climate goal within these Sustainable Development Goals, but is also looking towards the big climate change conference, which will happen in December. There are websites where you'll be able to find out what's happening near you, or you can start your own activity, and there's lots of ideas of how to get involved in that. So I'm happy to answer any questions on that. I think we've got some questions coming in. Possibly, yes.
Yeah, somebody was friendly enough to actually put in the link to the Action 2015 Light the Way initiative you just mentioned. And
excellent.
But no question, I think it was at times also a little bit hard to understand you. You were breaking up, but yeah, I hope people got the most important information from what you said. But yeah, one more question, Emily. Could you maybe share some of these activities with the people that have signed up for the webinar? Because as I said, it was at times a little bit hard to follow because you were breaking up. I don't know. Maybe that's a solution.
Yes, I can
offer. Yeah.
I want the bad connection.
Yeah. So basically, we are almost at the end of the time. So what I was planning to do is give you also an outlook on what is happening next. So how can people get engaged and how you can participate. And I will do that very quickly. And if you have further questions, yeah, please don't hesitate to reach out to me directly. And I'm super happy also to give you a little bit more background on what I think organizations at the national level can do to help on the implementation, because this will happen, as I said, from next year onwards. All focus will go to the implementation of these goals and targets. What I haven't mentioned is that this is it's not a legally binding agenda. Means countries sign up to it, but are not necessarily bound to it. So it is very important for civil society to keep pushing at the national level and ask what is happening in terms of implementation, and to ask, hey, this seems like a very important agenda for us, especially for us in South Asia, especially for us in Africa, especially for us in Latin America. I mean, also in Europe, of course. So I think there is a big role civil society can play, and I really would like to emphasize that almost at the end of this call. Yeah, just to flag to you that there is that there are people who are planning to mobilize together, or to have like a follow-up campaign basically around implementation and to help monitor. But this is pretty much focused as well at the international level. But what I see more important at this stage is that organizations at the national level come together and work cross-cuttingly. I know that this is a big issue. Most of the time, it's very hard, like, to think out of the box and to say, okay, why is my issue, my climate issue, important for poverty eradication? Why is my sustainable cities issue important for poverty eradication? And to make these links. So what I would suggest is, if you are interested in this agenda and if you want to get engaged and make your governments accountable, I would think that most likely there are people who are also interested in it from a different sector. And the most powerful thing would be like to build like technical groups together and ask for implementation at the national level. This is, I think, crucial, so that we can actually advance on this path of sustainable development, because otherwise, yeah, it is a nice document the UN might adopt or not, will adopt, but might not implement. So I think this is something I really wanted to iterate. So there is a question from Nathan. How is CAN planning to be involved in the SDG implementation in the next years? This is actually a good one, because there is a group, a Post-2015 group within CAN, and we are planning right now. There is still some work to do on the SDG side. The indicators to measure progress are still not developed, so the group is still engaged in that, but this will be finalized by the end of this year. And then, of course, we have to decide. I mean, we have to see if there are CAN members who are interested to work on implementation, for example, or if there are CAN members who would like to work on the follow-up. There will be a yearly event where governments will come together and where governments will basically present what they did in terms of the implementation so far. So there is some potential we could use to identify key countries, for example, and see what these key countries have been doing. There's also a huge potential I see in terms of exchange of good practices between different countries. I know, for example, that Colombia is a big example for Latin America, and we could also identify examples where implementation is already happening and where it is happening in a good way, including civil society, and where really, yeah, you have like some sort of a long-term planning, but with short-term action. So these are some of the ideas we could explore as CAN, but all depends, of course, on what CAN members are planning to do. So since we are a community, this depends pretty much on how much interest there is to use this opportunity and to work at the national level and also at the international level in a coordinated manner. So 1 minute left. Cool. Sorry for this monologue.
Well, I don't think we have any more questions. I don't see any coming. So I think we can wrap it up there. And of course, this has been recorded and will enter as a YouTube video.
Goodness, I hope not, honestly. I mean,
and also for anyone on here, we will send around the presentation Sven meant to give on this call, but he couldn't get on. So everyone shall have that. So thank you for joining. I think we've had like 14, 15 viewers. So hopefully people got something out of it. And yeah, so in the send out, we'll include the presentations and I'll include all of those details about how to get involved in September. Okay, and thank you to Lina and Vositha. Excellent presentation.
And if you want to get engaged, the Post-2015 group would be happy to have new people. So just get on the list.
Thank you both.
Great.
Bye.
Goodbye.